hurt credit, not add to credit. And by the way, that's why we see the new $5 debit card fee that people are paying every month that they're upset about because of Dodd-Frank. And that was insider dealing because Senator Durbin had former staffers that came to lobby him on behalf of retailers. This is dirty dealing. As President of the United States, I would end all of these payoffs to political donors by our legislators. That's wrong. That's got to end.
Here and then go here. Well, first and then there.
In addition to what Governor Romney said, I agree, repeal Dodd-Frank, but also get rid of the capital gains tax. That's a big wall between people with ideas and people with money. And we know which plan gets rid of the capital gains tax. No.
I just want to add one quick thing. You know, Dodd-Frank obviously is a disaster. It's estimated it's going to cost $1 trillion. I think one of the reasons we're not getting anywhere, and we're not getting anywhere in Washington, it's a partisan fight. It's a fight over power. Because Sarbanes-Oxley, which was done by the Republicans, it cost $1 trillion too. It's repealed that too. I mean, if you look at what we've done as Republicans, we have caused a lot of problems. To say it's all in these past 2 years, I mean, I think that is so misleading. That's why the American people are sick and tired of listening to the politicians.
All right, I want to bring my colleagues in. Right. Karen?
Governor Perry, taxpayers stand to lose $500 million in the collapse of Solyndra, which is a solar energy firm that was a centerpiece of the Obama Green Jobs Initiative. Do you think there were inadequate safeguards there, or do you think this is just the risk we run when the government gets involved in subsidizing new industries and technologies?
Well, I don't think the federal government should be involved in that type of investment, period. If states want to choose to do that, I think that's fine for states to do that.
And you have in Texas done that with the Emerging Technology Fund. But your own state auditor said earlier this year that that fund is neither accountable nor transparent. The Dallas Morning News reported that that fund gave $16 million to companies that are connected to your campaign contributors. And like Solyndra, some of the Emerging Technology Fund's investments have gone bust. So how is this different in principle from the Obama administration's efforts to pick winners in the future economy?
Well, first off, the Texas legislature has full oversight of that committee. It's approved it for, I think, since 2003. So every 2 years, the Texas legislature looks at it. It's had full oversight. And I can promise you the 54,600 jobs that have been created and then $14+ billion worth of investment that has come out of the enterprise fund in the state of Texas. Those people that have jobs today in the state of Texas, they are absolutely happy that we've got a program like that. And 75% of those emerging technology fund dollars or my appointees never made a contribution to me, period.
But you talk about oversight. The fact is that in some instances, your appointees have overruled the regional boards that have tried to turn back some of these deals.
Every one of those projects had the lieutenant governor, the speaker, and the governor's office. So there's extraordinary amount of oversight in those programs, and we're proud of them. I mean, we feel like that those are part of the reason that Texas has led the nation in the creation of jobs. While this country was losing 2.5 million jobs, Texas was creating 1 million jobs. That's the kind of leadership that America's longing for, someone that actually understands that you have to be able to give a climate where people know they can risk their capital and have a chance on that investment.
We have one more video I want to show. Here it is.
The more people who own their home, the better off America is. And we're making good progress. Our nation's 68% home ownership rate is the highest ever. More people own homes now than ever before in the country's history, and that's exciting for the future of America.
Speaker Gingrich, has the American dream of owning a home no longer a realistic dream, and is it too easy in America?
You know, there's a stream of American thought that really wishes we would decay and fall apart and that the future would be bleak so the government could then share the misery. was captured by Jimmy Carter in his Malaise speech. It's captured every week by Barack Obama in his apologias disguised as press conferences. The fact is, and the governor's exactly right, when we get back, I mean, a lot of these folks are right about a lot of things. His energy plan, his industrial manufacturing plan, most of what he put down, a fair amount, but not totally what my good friend said there, hard money with a very limited Federal Reserve. What Huntsman has done, and she's right on repealing Dodd-Frank. I'm shocked that the House Republicans haven't repealed Dodd-Frank. They ought to do it now. They ought to repeal Sarbanes-Oxley now. If we get back on track, and you know this as a former ambassador, the Chinese couldn't compete with us in 100 years if we got our act together in this country and we got back to doing the right things in this country, at which point we could afford to buy houses, which would solve virtually everything else. You got to be able to afford it to be able to buy it, and that's where things went wrong in the last decade.
All right, Julianna.
Mr. Cain, you recently said, quoting you, "Don't blame Wall Street. Don't blame the big banks. If you don't have a job and you're not rich, blame yourself." So are you telling the 14 million unemployed Americans that it's their fault that they don't have a job?
No, the question was, that response was directed at the people that are protesting on Wall Street, not that 14 million people who are out of work for no reason of their own other than that the economy is not growing. Not the millions of people that are underemployed. That statement was not directed at them. It was specifically directed at the people who are protesting on Wall Street. And I also said that they have basically targeted the wrong target. It should be against the failed policies of this administration, not Wall Street is where they should be protesting.
Governor Romney, I want to ask you, because President Obama's jobs bill is stalled in the Senate today, and so it may have to be broken into component parts for Congress to vote on. If the payroll tax cut is not extended, that would mean a tax increase for all Americans. What would be the consequences of that?
No one likes to see tax increases. But look, these stimulus bills the president comes out with that are supposedly going to create jobs, we've now seen this played in the theater several times. And what we're seeing hasn't worked. The American people know that when he went into office and borrowed $800 billion for a massive job stimulus program, that they didn't see the jobs. Some of those green jobs we were supposed to get, that's money down the drain. The right course for America is not to keep spending money on stimulus bills, but instead to make permanent changes to the tax code. Look, when you give it, as the president's bill does, if you give a temporary change to the payroll tax, and you say we're going to extend this for a year or two, employers don't hire people for a year or two. They make an investment in a person that goes over a long period of time. And so if you want to get this economy going again, you have to have people who understand how employers think, what it takes to create jobs. And what it takes to create jobs is more than just a temporary shift in a tax stimulus. It needs instead fundamental restructuring of our economy to make sure that we are the most attractive place in the world for investment, for innovation, for growth, and for hiring, and we can do that again.
So you would be okay with seeing the payroll tax cut?
Look, I don't like temporary little Band-Aids. I want to fundamentally restructure America's foundation economically.
Before closing question, I want not this hour and a half to pass without some recognition and conversation about the question of disparity in America.
Governor Perry, over the last 30 years, the income of the wealthiest 1% of Americans has grown by more than 300%. And yet we have more people living in poverty in this country than at any time in the last 50 years. Is this acceptable? And what would you do to close that gap?
The reason we have that many people living in poverty is because we got a president of the United States that's a job killer. That's what's wrong with this country today. You have a president who does not understand how to create wealth. He has overtaxed, overregulated the small businessmen and women to the point where they're laying off people. 2.5 million Americans are out there who have lost their jobs. We got 14 million without work. This president, I will suggest to you, is the biggest deterrent to getting this country back on track. And we have to do everything we can to replace Barack Obama in 2012.
All right, okay, but we're almost out of time. I want to give you a chance, and then we have to go to the final question.
There's more to it than that. I agree with Rick, what he said. But the biggest problem with poverty in America, we don't talk about here because it's an economic discussion, and that is the breakdown of the American family. You want to look at the poverty rate among families that have a husband and wife working in them? It's 5% today. A family that's headed by one person, it's 30% today. We need to do something. We need to talk about economics. The home, the word home in Greek is the basis of the word economy. It is the foundation of our country. We need to have a policy that supports families, that encourages marriage, that has fathers take responsibility for their children. You can't have limited government. You can't have a wealthy society if the family breaks down that basic unit of society, and that needs to be included in this economic discussion.
I've got one last question. One last question with 30 minutes. One last question. One last question as we close this evening. And each of you, 30 seconds. What is it about you that you want to connect with the American people in their both despair and in their hope for the future that says something essentially about who you are? And I begin with Congresswoman Bachmann.
I'm sorry, Charlie.
A little distraction.
It is about the individual. We have 30 seconds here. We've talked about issues here, but I want to talk for a moment as a last impression, a sense of what it is about you that you want to hear and let the American people know about you and your sense of recognizing their own pain as well as their hope.
Well, I do. I grew up in a middle-class home. We went to below
30 seconds.
we went to below poverty when my parents divorced. And my mother worked very hard. We all did. We all got jobs. And we were able to work our way through college. And eventually, my husband and I started a business. We have broken hearts for at-risk kids, Charlie. That's why we took 23 foster children into our home. I believe the best solutions are the ones closest to home. If we reach out as individuals to help people and have broken hearts for people and care for them on a personal basis, then we don't need big government to step in and do that job. The more that we can do to love people, the better off the society
Herman
will be.
Cain. 30 seconds.
I can connect with people's pain because I was poor before I was poor. My dad worked 3 jobs. I understand what that means, but more importantly, with my career and with my record, I understand that leaders are supposed to make sure we're working on the right problems. We assign the right priority. Surround yourself with the right people, which will allow you to put together the right plans. And yes, sometimes those plans will be bold plans because this economy is on life support. We don't need to trim around the edges. We need a bold plan.
Speaker Gingrich.
Well, look, I grew up in an Army brat family. We moved all over the country. In recent years, I've had relatives out of work. I've had folks who are trying to find jobs for up to a year. We have, I think, a pretty good sense of the pain level. But I also think it's important to say to leaders that you find solutions. I don't think people hire one of us just to say, I sympathize with you. I think they hire us to say, this is how we will solve it. And I would say every person at this table is more likely to solve those problems than Barack Obama.
Congressman Paul.
My motivation, my goals has always been to promote liberty, believing that's what made America great. If we want prosperity, if we want peace, we understand what the cause of liberty is all about. And we have to understand that a free market system and sound money gives us the prosperity. And it also is the humanitarian program, because once you get into the welfare state and the socialist state, it all backfires. So if you care about people, you believe in liberty, that's what made America great. That's what I want to restore.
Senator Santorum.
As was mentioned, I grew up in a steel town, and one of the things that I realized is that when manufacturing left, a lot of the people in the middle income of America left. And I just read a recent study that actually income mobility from the bottom 2 quintiles up into the middle of up into the middle income is actually greater, the mobility in Europe, than it is in America today. We need to change that, and the way you do it is by creating jobs in the manufacturing sector of the economy, which is what I will do. It will create that income mobility. It'll create the opportunity for semi-skilled and lower skilled and skilled workers to rise in society. It will take those people off of Occupy and bring them into the workplace where they can have family-sustaining jobs.
Governor Huntsman.
Not only have I seen and participated in the creation of a great family business where jobs mean something,
but I presided over a state that delivered the lowest level of unemployment in this country, 2.4%. And when I saw on the faces of people who had the dignity of a job, you knew what it meant to moms and dads and entire families. And when Sheriff Hardy, who is here in Hillsborough, New Hampshire, when he talks about his deputies who for the first time are handing out foreclosure notices to the middle class, and they're seeing a rise in suicides, they're seeing a rise in spousal abuse, they're seeing a rise in substance abuse, it gives you a sense